So we've just started Capricorn season, Tevet, and the new moon always happens in the last few days of Chanukah. So we're really getting that boost of light and miracles coming into the month. And according to the Sefer Yezirah, the Book of Formations, the letter that is associated with this month is an Ayin. Ayin. Like two eyes and a nose. Ayin. Seeing. Also Ayin, like a spring, the water coming up from the earth. So my question is, through what eyes are we seeing? Am I seeing all of the wellspring of resource that is arising? Or am I seeing through other eyes? Capricorn is about our systemic conditioning and the structures that exist around us. Makes me think of a teaching from astrology teacher moshe wolfe, when he talks about our deconditioning process from the base chakra, that it's a combination of three archetypes. The first one is Scorpio and Pluto, which is that deep soul evolution where like stuff happens that just really pushes you to evolve. And that's associated with the month of Cheshvan, which has also got a snake symbology. Then you've got Uranus, Aquarius, which is the month of Shvat, where it's the kind of process where we can, be wearing a certain clothing, and then one day we just decide that that's not for us anymore, and we're able to just make a pivot and go in a different direction. And sometimes it really is as simple as that. We're doing something for years, and we've just gotten to a point where we're able to just totally let that go and make a shift into something else. But then we've got Saturn, which is Capricorn, which is deconditioning from an existing system and allowing us space to recondition into something else. So the tribe associated with this month is Dan, and Dan also means to judge. And at the end of Jacob's life, when he's giving blessings to the sons, he mentions Dan like a snake, a viper on the path that bites the horse's heel to throw him backwards. And so it's really like that deconditioning process from the system is something that takes place over time. It makes me think of when Rabbi Akiva was sitting and he was watching water drip onto a boulder, and with time that dripping, slowly with time that boulder cracked open. And when we think about our systemic conditioning that's laid upon us from an organic intelligence perspective, we've got that status quo attractor, that attractor to what is wrong, to how things have always been, that negativity bias. And we're just going to be kind of going around doing the same things over and over again. And that is really laid upon us. It's nobody's fault. It's just what is. And for us to really allow for something different to help us decondition ourselves from that negativity bias and what's wrong attention, it requires a reorientation, a re-looking towards the outside and orientating ourselves to the here and now through our senses, and an orientation towards pleasure, to what's enjoyable, and stabilizing that in our system. And in so doing, we set up the conditions that can allow the system to change. We set up the conditions that allow the system to then orientate itself into something else. That's not about that status quo, what's wrong, but into what we all call phase 3. And in organic intelligence called phase 3, where we get into a felt sense of trust, where we get into positive reinforcement, where I'm not in that systemic conditioning where I feel really bad before I feel really good, and I'm just yo-yoing between all of that, but I can get to a place where the system is reorganized in a way where I can enjoy going up and I can enjoy going down. It's more balanced, it's more oriented, there's more continuation between different states, and I've increased my bandwidth to experience more of life, to really go and live through a place of trust. Now just think about this month. The Sefer Yezirah talks about anger being the sense, and how important anger is in our movement from our systemic conditioning into liberation, into something new. And the liver is the organ associated with this month. Just thinking about the liver's function of it's secreting insulin that's helping balance our glucose levels in our blood. It's filtering our blood and bringing balance and harmony, which is part of what is fueling this organism, right? The glucose, the energy stores that are available to us. The liver is responsible for that. And how important anger is in our movement into liberation. Like, you know, and with our systemic conditioning, how many things can be laid upon us around anger. Like, for example, being a woman, you know, it's not appropriate to be angry, or women don't get angry, and how we can be stuck in patterns where we just go into like depression and sadness, and something can happen and we just start crying versus getting angry. Because getting angry can be really uncomfortable. It can be a really uncomfortable place to be. And it's also been really dangerous. You know, people have been violent and toxic and abusive from states of anger. And so what is it to be able to metabolize our anger and to be able to use it in a way that provides the necessary energy into a system to allow for real change? To move from our sadness and our depression and our suffering into something else, we got to go through anger. And even just thinking on the 10th of Tevet is a fast day where the walls of Jerusalem were sieged, and then that was the beginning of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple. And so just symbolically think about the walls of Jerusalem being sieged, how we can be suffocated and surrounded from all ends and all sides, right? And taking away our resources and suffocating us, and how anger is an appropriate response to push back and be like, hey, no, these are my boundaries. This is what's important to me, right? And this done, which also means judge, right, or criticism, like how important it is to be able to use that in a positive way, to be able to discern, to be able to stand up and be able to say, that is not okay, right? Like, no, be able to draw the line in the sand and be like, no, not, you can't pass here, right? To be able to create our boundaries versus having those self-critical thoughts that are associated with our negativity bias, where I can be having a really painful experience, and on top of that I'm throwing even more self-criticism and saying like, you shouldn't be feeling that, why is this experience happening, it shouldn't be this way, I'm going in the wrong direction, and we bring all this criticism to something and we make something that's already painful even more painful. It's like that double-edged sword or the double-edged arrow. And as we make that shift, to be able to use our discernment, to be able to judge things in a healthy way. And even symbolically, just thinking about where Tevet is mentioned, it's mentioned in the Megillat Esther, the book of Esther, when Esther goes to King Achsahverosh. And this movement of that liberation of that feminine from the patriarchy, which is our systemic conditioning, Capricorn, and that movement away of like the queen approaching the king. And also just thinking about Tevet, which is the liver, which also means respect, and how often respect has been used, or people who have disrespected has been used as a reason to get angry and to then be violent towards someone because you are not respecting me, right? Which is also in that patriarchal society, like what is respect? And so I feel that in this month there's also this deeper refinement and understanding of like, what is it to respect one another? What is it to be in a relationship with someone in equality, in an equal partnership, where you just mutually respect each other and love each other? And that respect and mutual love and respect is what brings the energy to the system to bring balance and fuel to the system. Fuel and balance. Thinking of insulin, Tevet, liver, insulin, and bringing those glucose levels right. The symbology in that. Einayim. May we be oriented, may we have the perspective of being able to see through the eyes of all the resource and the water and the resource that is arising from the ground to support us. Thank you for listening. May you have a blessed month, and we'll be in touch soon.